in New York. In the summer of 1922, the tempo of the city approached hysteria.
Tears on the mausoleum floor, blood stains the Coliseum doors, lies on the lips of a bitch, rolling in the Rolls Royce Commission.
Stocks reached record peaks, and Wall Street boomed in a steady golden roar. The parties were bigger, the shows were broader, the buildings were higher. The morals were looser, and the ban on alcohol had backfired, making the liquor cheaper. Wall Street was luring, young and ambitious, and I was one of them. I rented a house 20 miles from the city on Long Island. I lived at West Egg, in a forgotten groundskeeper's cottage squeezed among the mansions of the newly rich. To get started, I bought a dozen volumes on credit, banking, and investments, all new to me.
The stock market hit another record.
Yes, well, of course, nothing is 100%. Well, I wouldn't go investing every penny. At Yale, I dreamed of being a writer, but I gave all that up. With the sun shining and the great bursts of leaves on the trees, I planned to spend the summer studying. And I probably would have, were it not for the riotous amusements that beckoned from beyond the walls of that colossal castle, owned by a gentleman I had not yet met, named Gatsby.
So, he was your neighbor.
My neighbor.
Hello. So that was the oops, hang on, I'll just reshare. That was the introduction to The Great Gatsby, one of the film adaptations. That is the most recent 2013 film adaptation that was done by Mr. Baz Luhrmann, an Australian director, Moulin Rouge and things like that. However, we're not going to be watching the film, not yet anyway. We're actually going to start developing some literary skills. So when you go to university, whether you do general sciences, psychology, humanities, pretty much anything, you're going to have analysis and interpretive skills. And the best way to get those is actually through literary comprehension. So The Great Gatsby, fortunately, was not copyrighted because it was written in the 1920s, which means we cannot access it. So I have provided a link to the PDF, which you can download, and hopefully your teacher has downloaded it and popped it onto your smartboard so that you can download it and start reading it. So we're going to be doing a weekly reading and analysis of The Great Gatsby, looking at the different themes and the different motifs, looking at some literary terms and language and knowledge, using context, reading between the lines, interpreting characters and meaning, and hopefully you enjoy it as well. If we have enough time before you guys head off to university, we'll also watch the film, which is pretty good. So welcome to our novel. So why do we actually study literature? As I said, doesn't matter, even if you're going into businesses, you're going to have to be able to interpret information. And literature is probably the most difficult thing that you can interpret. So if we start off with something really, really hard, like analysing literature, when you come to analysing business studies, general science, medical journals, etc., you're going to have all these fantastic skills that are very transferable. So the reason that we study is looking in depth at things, not just taking the surface for it. Critical thinking, which I've discussed and I think is probably the most important skill that anyone can ever have. Analysis and interpretation increases your intellect. It actually makes you smarter. So it affects the synapses in your brain, and the stronger, thicker those synapses are, it actually increases your intelligence. improves reading, writing, and vocabulary, so it improves your speaking as well. Develops imagination, which kind of goes toward critical thinking as well, and also considering the complexity of human nature. So most literature looks at the complexity of human nature, even if it's through a book like Animal Farm, which is actually just a representation of a human society, or in fact that was a Soviet or communist society through animals on a farm. And also it helps in becoming a more well-rounded person. So before we begin, let's have a look at who wrote it. It was written by Francis Scott Fitzgerald. So he's one of the most, oh, I spelled that incorrectly, sorry. He's one of the most famous, well-respected American writers of recent history. Well, America only has a recent history, unless it's the Indian people. He wrote primarily about the jazz era. I also spelled that wrong, I do apologise, in the 1920s. I've been recording about 6 classes today, so it's getting a bit late in the afternoon. I apologise for my errors. So Francis, or F. Scott Fitzgerald as everybody knows him, he was an alcoholic and he had some serious financial struggles. So he tended to live beyond his means. That means that, you know, you maybe only earn a certain amount, but you want to live like a rich person, so you continue to do so. That's kind of what he did. And you might see a reflection of his perspective on the world in the book itself. His wife Zelda, if anyone's interested, she was hugely influential in popular culture. She's a fantastic, fascinating character. And then finally, The Great Gatsby, considered one of the most important novels written of all time. So in the, I'm not sure about the Eastern world, but definitely in the Western world, it's one of the most well-respected novels of all time. And the interesting thing about their themes, and they're the same as Shakespeare, those themes still exist today, but we need to look at it, interpret it, and do a comparison of what it was then, what it is now, and if there are commonalities. So welcome to The Great Gatsby. So here's just to set you up. So it's a world of extravagance. So the 1920s, sort of dichotomy of different things that were happening, but certainly very extravagant. Suddenly the skirts were getting shorter, the dancings were getting cruder, the First World War had finished, the Second one hadn't started yet. So there was kind of an explosion of art and political and social and cultural change. So it's set in the 1920s in New York City, and it's kind of, there's a bit of a comparison between new money and old money, and also rich people and poor people. The concept of new money is people that might have suddenly they've got oil, and so they've got new money. Old money might have come across from England, so they've always been rich. They might have been kings, queens, ladies and lords, and there was a bit of a class struggle between those two. So new money were more of the old money people thought that they were a bit offensive, and the new money wanted to be part of just a general money concept. It was during Prohibition. So in America in the 1920s, they decided that alcohol was immoral, and so they prohibited it, which is where the word prohibition comes from. So alcohol was actually illegal. As you probably know, that actually ended up in creating a great mob world, great underground black market, underground discos, underground clubs and that sort of thing, which actually kind of helped the culture. So it worked out quite well for us. POV, which is just an acronym for point of view. So we hear through first person, Jeremy, first person, yay, in the voice of Nick Carraway. So we're actually listening to the whole story through Nick Carraway. So he's telling us this story. So it might be a little bit subjective, and you've got to think about the point of view or the voice that we're hearing when we're reading a book, okay? So, main characters. This is one of the parts that you're going to be doing while you're reading throughout the book. So you tell me, as you read, start a character analysis. Now I've given an example of the worksheet that you should have been given. As you continue through the book, it's possible that characters are actually going to develop further, and what you first thought may be different to your final impression. So I want you to tell me how the author, through Nick, creates the character. How do you understand the character's background, motivation, and behaviour? So Nick, I'd start off with some general details and just a couple of words about your initial impression. And then we'll probably go through the first half of the book. And then for the second half of the book, look at the character development. How have they changed? And then we're going to have a look at the initial impression versus the character development, see if there's any differences. So you're going to find some general details in the first couple of chapters. Develop the initial impression. So you feel that they're vapid or small-minded or intriguing or obnoxious. So whatever words that you see initially. Oops. Then motive. The other thing, and on this same document, I've actually written down all of the main motives in this book, and there are a lot of them. The motive, it basically means theme or themes included in a novel or also in film, probably in music as well. So as you read the novel, keep the worksheet beside you and see if you can identify where the author talks about the following motives and providing an example. So if you see the motive wealth, the theme wealth, they might talk about people having a lot of money or people not having any money. And what does it say? So what does this mean in terms of what is the theme? What page or pages have you seen it on? Give me some example sentences of when wealth has appeared as a theme. Not when he's mentioned money, but when wealth, the concept of it, has appeared as a theme. And then the author's comments on the motive. Dreams is about, what I'd like to happen. Hope is the belief that those dreams will come true. Okay, so those are different things. So as I said, there's a really big list that you will have. I would definitely suggest jumping on your English to English dictionary and just having a look at the meaning of these words. Okay, the meaning of those words, any words that you don't understand. As I said, English to English, let's make sure that we don't use any Chinese to English. Each chapter, so we're going to do chapter by chapter, and each chapter I'm going to provide you with some information and some vocabulary words. As I said, these are definitely high level words which are going to help in general to have these. So feigned is to make believe. So if someone is pretending to be sick, they feigned it. An epigram is a pithy saying or remark expressing an idea in a clever or amusing way. So she's got her finger on, she's got her finger on the pulse, means she knows what's going on. So it's a pithy, it's just a saying or remark to express an idea in a clever way. So epigram. Supercilious is behaving or thinking one is superior. So people that think they're just a little bit better than anyone else is supercilious. I'm sure you can think of some people that you've met that are a bit like that. Contempt is a feeling that a person or a thing is beneath consideration, worthless, or deserving scorn. So people that sort of look down, they have contempt for you, they just don't think you're worthy. Wane, of a person's complexion or appearance, so pale and giving the impression of illness or exhaustion. So people that might be wan, I hope Terry's not there, but lots of English people tend to be a little pasty, look pale, and they look like they're sick, but they're not really. Bantering is talk or exchange of remarks in a good human way. So have a bit of banter. It's kind of like teasing each other. A pessimist is someone who always looks at the worst case scenario. Everything's going to go wrong. They're a pessimist or they're pessimistic. And cynical, someone that's distrusting, criticizing or mocking. So they don't trust you, they're cynical of what you're doing or saying. So all of these words are going to be in chapter 1. And as I said, every chapter I'm going to give you some information. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do today is I'd like you to complete the anticipation questionnaire. So these are some questions that go around kind of the motives. And what you need to do is, number 1, decide how you feel about it. Always true, sometimes true, depends, sometimes false or always false. So depends mean sometimes you should choose someone to marry based on financial wealth. So what I want from you is what you think about that. Do you think you should always? Sometimes you should. Depends on the situation. It's sometimes false or it's always false. If someone comes from a higher social class, then they are a better person. So someone that might be royalty or a lord or a lady, they would be a higher social class. Do you think that they're better than everybody else because of that? And then you need to write 2 sentences explaining your thoughts. So why do you think 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 about this? Why do you think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 about this? This is going to take you a little bit of time, so I would suggest that you actually pause this recording now so that you can complete the anticipation guide, okay? And all of these questions, it's about your perspective, so not about the book. You don't need to read anything right now. I just want you to start thinking about these particular values and how you feel about them. And this is the beginning of our just general interpretation, okay? So again, please pause and complete this. Okay, so hopefully you have paused, and now I'm going to take you through what you're going to be doing each week. So what we're going to do each week is I will go through the answers to the questions, and here's an example. Oh, no, I'm wrong. Sorry, excuse me. Let's go through some literary terms to start off with. Oh, no, hang on. Okay, we will go through these literary terms because you're going to be mentioning it, and then I'm going to talk to you about what you need to do for this class. So motive is, as I said, it's themes. An internal conflict, nice and easy. Internal conflict is what you're feeling on the inside. Should I do this? Should I do that? Am I happy with myself? Am I not? Am I a good person? Am I a bad person? Who am I? Where am I? Why am I? Okay. A simile is when you use like or as. So the moon is like a ball of cheese, okay? Whereas if it, simile, a metaphor is when you say that something is actually something. The moon is a ball of cheese. So simile, like or as, whereas a metaphor is giving an exact. Hyperbole is exaggeration of things. Oh, I had the most terrible evening. That would be hyperbole. Unless someone's really died, you probably haven't had a terrible evening. You might have just had a not very nice dinner. So hyperbole is when we really over the top emphasize and exaggerate something. So what you guys are going to be doing, and I'll just share the other screen for you. Here we go. No, not that one. So I will have sent this document through to you, and this is for chapter 1. Okay, so we've talked about these literary terms. You can look them up as well, again, English to English only, but hopefully my example has given you some details. So you can see we've got pages 11 through to page 16, but you're not going to be doing 16. We're going up to question 16. So you're going to be answering questions. I've actually selected some questions because some of it's a little bit complicated, and I want to make sure that you're comfortable with it. So these are the questions that I would like you to complete. So question 1, questions 3 through 8, questions 11 through 16, okay? So those are the questions that I'd like you to do. So you should complete the anticipation questionnaire and start reading through The Great Gatsby and answer questions 1, 3 through 8, and 11 to 16. I believe that you will be able to answer all of those questions. Any that I've not commented on, that's fine, you don't need to. I would like you to complete these in full sentences. Here you can see they've actually taken an excerpt from the book. So you need to read through here and then answer the questions that are actually involved. These are really good comprehensive skills that are definitely going to help you at university. Then we've got how do you describe Daisy? All of this is from the information directly from chapter 1. So we're just doing chapter 1 this week, and then we'll move on to chapter 2 next week. So next week, what I will do is we will together go through the answers to chapter 1, and then we'll move on to chapter 2, and I will give you a questionnaire for chapter 2. We'll continue that up until you finish here at GAC, as I said, just to continue to develop your English reading, writing, and vocabulary skills. As usual, if you need me, I am available on WeChat. Feel free to get in contact with me if you've got any questions, if you're unsure, if the literature you find is a bit confusing. Again, feel free to use an English to English dictionary throughout this. Please do not copy and paste, and please do not read a Chinese version. There's no point in doing that, and you're just going to be doing yourself a disservice. This work is actually going to go through to your final course work mark, okay? So do be aware that you're actually going to be marked on your performance and ensuring that you've completed the activities. That's all from me today. I don't think I've got anything else on here. Yeah, send your answer sheet to me. That is fine if you want to take a picture and send it through, just so I can see that you've completed the work, and then we'll go through the answers together next week in our Great Gatsby class. Thank you very much, and see you next class.